So I want to talk about dry brushing. The Mentor Monday question currently is learning a little bit about dry brushing, and I've taken just a dummy model and I've covered the backpack in a very, very dark gray. So this is dark neutral gray from the Pro Acryl line, and I'm just going to demonstrate slightly brighter grays as we go. Even a light neutral gray, just to demonstrate. Now, dry brushing is not an end-all be-all technique for everybody. It is a tool in your toolkit. I've heard some people are uncomfortable with dry brushing because there's like a stigma around it. You know, like dry brushing isn't really for strong painters. Well, that's nonsense, right? You paint how you want to paint and paint with what you want to paint with. So this is just teaching you a tool in your tool bag, because there are some times where you can use dry brushing to your advantage. You can do it very, very lightly and let the pigmentation build up so you actually get a texture. I've done that for a stone looking carapace on a Tyranid before, where you just build up color with different shades, just a darker color to a brighter color to a brighter color. So one of the main things you are going to get out of dry brushing, though, is if you do it effectively, you can get some highlighting on some of the raised areas. And I'm going to show you some good things and bad things about it. Okay, so we get plenty on here. You're going to want a dry paper towel to do this, and I've already done dark neutral gray, so we're going to go with dark warm gray. Actually, I think I already have some on the palette, so you get just a little bit on the end of the brush. Okay, get just a little bit on here. The whole idea is to take your paper towel and we're just going to clean off the paint. And I'm just going to come across these little vents on the backpack, and you just and I'm doing something wrong intentionally while we do this, okay? So I'm just going to come across the model. Okay, and you can see it's starting to build up on those edges. Now it's not very bright. Just to get the point across, we'll go to light neutral gray, make it real bright. I'll do it on the other vents, and I'll make the same mistake there as well to show you. Now, there are times where dry brushing can be used as a lazy way out. There's times where dry brushing can be used as an effective skill. You know, certainly if you're going to go into like a painting competition, and we don't need that arm anyway. If you're going to go to a painting competition and you really want something to soar, dry brushing might not always be your go-to technique for certain things, but it might. Okay, so I've emptied the brush. Right, and you're just going to pull it across. Okay. Now I've done the same thing twice incorrectly on purpose. Can't see it very well here, but you can see it very well in here. See how much paint is on here? And see how I have also beaten up the rest of the model with paint? It's the first mistake people make with dry brushing, I think. My brush wasn't dry enough. Quite literally, it was not a dry brush. Okay? Also, you want to be a little bit more careful with how you apply the paint. Because now what I would have to do is come back in and clean this up, right? And I'm sure there are plenty of people at home going, "Yep, that looks like what I do." There are downsides to it, so I'm actually gonna use the pistol. There's a lot more texture here, so let's try this again, right? So I'm just picking out a few different areas, right, where I can get some contrast. And I'll even go brighter. And this is fun because I've got a couple of these Space Marine models. They're just my big dummies. This one I think might be Steve. I think we named this one Steve. So I'm really trying to get this dry here. And if you're gentle, right? Because a lot of people just want to start swinging their brush and smacking everything. If you're gentle, see that? And instead, like over here, I was just beating it up, right? Just it's messy. But up here, you just kind of gentle, right? And you can incorporate this into various techniques, right? So I'm just very lightly, I'm actually doing it almost as a bit of an edge highlight here. And I'm doing it a little bit heavier now. You can see that it's starting to outline a little bit more. You could even go and then other things that you can do, right? We'll take this gun for example. And you can go crazy on the weapon, right? I'm just gonna flick it across. Right, so you can definitely hit it. But if you're not careful, you can definitely get streaky, right? Like I'm just rubbing it all over the gun now. No, this is being done on purpose to really build it. You can see it's getting chalky. Really building up. Like look at the front of this gun. Now I mean you can make that effect. And there's other things you can do, like if you make it chalky with a very, very bright shade, you can come back in and wash and blend things together, right? You can use this as a stepping process, right? To add a little bit of texture. But in reality, you want to be subtle. And a little bit's going a long way. Alright, like on this one we're going to do it a little bit more gentle. And you could even do things like let it build up on certain areas just to add some highlights. So, but yeah. Just take it easy on the edges. Let it work its way up. Don't go overboard. Don't go slapping it all over the model, right? You want to make it effective. You could easily do stuff like this with edge highlighting as well. Another thing that you can do, and when it comes to terrain, another thing, guys and gals, make sure when you're done with your brush, you clean it very well. Clean it super well. And make sure that the brush is very dry before you do it again with the next highlight or the next color. Another thing you can do with terrain, some of the newer AdMech or Sector Mechanicum terrain has large columns of steel, or on a large model, such as the legs of a Knight Titan, you can cover them in silver, you can wash them down, and you can use a large dry brush. GW sells one. I know Creature Caster Monument has a larger dry brush as well. I don't think it's this big. I'll have to go find it, but you can get a larger dry brush. This is when you can get aggressive, when it's the very first thing, like on my armature. I did like a very basic tabletop paint up of an armature, and on the legs, covered the whole thing in a metallic. Then I washed it, and then I came back with a slightly brighter. So I did a dark silver and a regular silver. The dark silver was the base coat. I washed it with Nuln Oil, and then I did a very, very heavy dry brush with that bright silver. And so now you can see, before I did any other work, right? So the whole model was basically silver. So you get effects like that. Yeah, you can around here see things. So you can even do this with your terrain too, with your basic color and then your brighter shade. If you're gonna do, I don't know. I think some of the GW columns I've seen have been like a darker blue or like a turquoise, right? Thunderhawk blue kind of thing. You can paint it in that basic color, even wash it to darken it, and then come back with that original color and dry brush back in, stuff like that. But yeah, it can pile up on all sorts of things. A stone-like carapace like I did on a Tyranid. Rocks. Dirt. You can take your scenic bases. As a matter of fact, you can take your scenic bases and you can do things with dry brushing there. Base isn't done on this guy, but you know, it's a general start to it. So you can anywhere that there's texture, you can dry brush. As a matter of fact, for those of you who may not realize it, these GW bases are technically textured. Watch. Let me see if I can I'm going to do this on the spot. Let's see if this works. Ready? I hope I don't embarrass myself right now. Okay, so like... See, it's catching some of that texture. Now I have barely any paint on this. I just have a little bit of what's left from when I was doing some other painting earlier, so... Yeah, so dry brush can be effective. It can be overused, but I definitely think it could definitely be underutilized too. You want to be careful how much... Making a mess. In the background. Stuff's falling over. It can be overutilized for sure. You can definitely get too heavy with the dry brushing. You can definitely use it too much. You can use it too late in the process, and where dry brushing will actually set you back. Because, as an example here, if all the armor's done and everything, and I just wanted to kind of do this, if I'm getting really, really messy, I've got to go back and redo some of the armor. So you want to be careful when and how you use your dry brushing. I always think as a good rule of thumb for a good practice for me, I mostly will do a lot of my dry brushing at the start of a project, if I'm using it at all, to help me get some additional colors worked in, some highlights worked in. You can use it before you shade anything if you happen to use things like Citadel washes, especially if you go like one step up with the brightness. I showed you I started with dark neutral gray. I did a little bit with dark warm gray, which didn't show very much in the camera, but it was very subtle. But then I went extreme to light neutral gray, right? So you see how extremely different these are. If you want something kind of in the middle, right, you can base with the dark, you can dry brush with the light neutral gray, and then you can wash back in with like a black wash. You can just do an all over wash. And what it's going to do is tint down the light neutral gray. And if you're really, really light with your wash, it won't overly do it where you'll get a nice good stain to it. So tons of options. It can definitely get you a setup, but hopefully that is helpful for somebody to get started with dry brushing. As you get more used to dry brushing, you can do all sorts of crazy things. Like you can see there's some brown underneath this gray. I did just that. I took, I think actually Xandri dust, washed it with Agrax Earthshade, and then started dry brushing some gray shades or gray layers over top of this. And by dry brushing it instead of fully painting it, it shows through because I'm not getting all of the surface covered with the paint of the gray. So there's all sorts of options out there. So give it a try, check it out, let me know what you think, and hopefully that was helpful. More Mentor Monday questions can be, you can join my Patreon and get exclusive questions answered through some of those pledge levels. Also, you can come into the Discord and ask all sorts of your questions there. So check out the live Twitch stream if you're watching this on the YouTube later, or join the Discord if you're not already a member, and get involved. But the Patreon is the Patreon link is going to be in the description, as well as some of the supplies I used to do this, including the brush care video. So thank you all very, very much.